Good morning.
Good morning. So for those of you joining us this morning, my name is Jess. I'm the Health Promotion Manager in Borden, and co-facilitating with me today is Braden. She is one of our specialists from Borden as well. If you're with us this morning, can you give us a quick hi in the chat box? I know when we just looked quickly, there's not too many of you out there today, but we're going to go through this and hopefully get you the information that you're looking for.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Anybody else out there? I'm from Ottawa.
Ottawa. Good morning, Jessica.
I think that's actually all we have this morning. Maybe there'll be some more people jump in as we go through the presentation. But because it is just the two of you, please feel free to make it as interactive as you'd like. If you're unfamiliar with this platform, you used the chat box already, so we're off to a great start. Brayden and I will be doing some polls as we go through. We have some questions for you. But please feel free to add some questions into that chat box as well, and we'll kind of decipher and respond as we go through. So if there is something specific you want to learn about, because there's only a couple of you on the line, definitely gear our presentation, and that way you're going to get what you want out of it. So what we're hoping to talk to you about today is a healthy lifestyle. It's been a series that Brayden and I have done. This is the last kind of section of it, and we're going to be talking about physical activity throughout your life, how important it is, how much you should need, and kind of where to gear your time and efforts based off of different age groups. I'm pretty excited to present with Brayden this morning. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Well, here I am. Let's get started. And then it says, before we get started. Wonderful. So just some quick housekeeping stuff that we need to go through. This presentation that you're about to watch is intellectual property of D&D. So you cannot reproduce it. You cannot mix it up. You cannot, any of those types of things, strictly forbidden. Keep in mind that with some of the topics that we talk about, not necessarily this one, it can be sensitive in nature. And it might not be appropriate for children, so parental discretion is on you. So make sure that you use your discretion when letting people view this or letting children view this. If we decide to share some stories or someone comes on and talks about some different things, which we can allow. So if you're out there and you want to actually be on camera and you want to talk, we can give you permission to do that. Just ask. But if that's the case, keep in mind that people's stories are theirs and theirs alone to tell. We want to make sure that we kind of respect that privacy to the best of our ability and try not to discuss those things outside of this webinar, which is interesting because the next statement is that this webinar is being recorded and it will be available for viewing. So keep that in mind. If you are asking questions or you do want to share something, calfconnection.ca is one of our best resources. So you can find a list of all the webinars that the health promotion teams across the country have done so that you can go back and refer and find some interesting information there. Oh, hi, Alex. You joined in. That's good. Perfect.
Previous national webinars on the YouTube channel, so CFMWS YouTube channel, last a couple of days ago now. And there's some great supplementary information to this webinar. So on ergonomics, on sitting, other things like training for a race or whatever your goals are. Definitely check out that for more information. We'll just kind of touch on some of the surface level physical activity stuff, but there's tons more information out there if you need it.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that, Brayden. So the outline that we're going to be following today is we're going to go over three key things. We're going to talk about the basics of being active. So with that, we're going to talk about what physical activity is, what an active living lifestyle looks like, as well as what is physical fitness or exercise specifically. All too often, we group them all into the same thing, and we don't necessarily understand the differences between them. So we're going to break that down for you a little bit. We're then going to talk about a sedentary lifestyle. We're going to go over some quick statistics in terms of the calf and what we're seeing, why a sedentary lifestyle can be very detrimental to your health, and how a lot of people don't even understand that they do live a sedentary lifestyle. I know a lot of really fit people that really aren't that active, and often we group those together, but it's not necessarily true. The last portion, and it's what we've been doing with our series, is we're going through physical activity for all ages. So we're going to take you through children, youth, adult, as well as seniors, and what their physical activity requirements are, and the best types of activity to help them reach those requirements. So that's a little bit about what we're going to be going over for the next hour and a bit, or hour, less than an hour, right, Brayden? We're not going over today. All right, so when it comes to exercise, physical activity, and an active lifestyle, as I was just starting with, it's really important to understand the basics. So Brayden, if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about these three things. So when we talk about physical activity, oftentimes we think about a lot of different things. Maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's lifting weights, maybe it's going for a bike ride, maybe it's just playing with your kids in the yard. All of those things count as physical activity. So physical activity really is that purposeful movement, right? It's really important that we all maintain a physically active lifestyle. And more over the last, I even say 15 to 20 years, people are becoming a lot more sedentary. Okay, and they're kind of moving away from that active living lifestyle. And I'm not sure what a lot of people have been experiencing, but I've definitely heard some feedback about how working from home, the whole COVID-19 transition has made people even less active. Okay, in some cases, it's gone the other way and people have become more active, but in some cases, it's been less. So over in the chat box, I want you to respond very quickly with a yes or no or Y or an N. Do you feel that you are more active since COVID-19 hit? Yes or no? No. Yes. Okay, we're 50-50 here. Anybody else? Alex, no? Okay. Yes. Oh, still 50-50. Wonderful. So with that, can you give me some of the reasons or what's stopping you from being more active? Is it the fact that the fitness facilities aren't available? Is it the fact that you have to be home with kids and you're finding that a struggle or challenging? Is it the fact that you find yourself actually busier and you have no time? What's your reason for not being quite so active?
Yes, what's your reason for being more active? More time? I don't know. More yard work?
Yeah. So you have some of your activities that you consistently would do, they're being shut down, so you don't have access to them. Lack of motivation, definitely. Extra work since working in public health and lack of access. Yeah, for sure. I like Patricia saying there's more yard work and projects. There's definitely lots to do if you can find it. It's that motivation. I spend the time I would be driving, going for walks or workout. That's an excellent way to transition your time. A lot of it has to do with just structuring your days and trying to find the best spot to fit that in. I know for myself in physical activity, I do best if I get it done first thing in the morning and I schedule that in there. It definitely helps with things. So when we move to the second point about an active living or active lifestyle, I'm sure a lot of things are coming to mind when you think about that. When I think about an active lifestyle, it just means any chance I can to choose to be more active, I do that. So if it means in the evenings, instead of watching TV, I'm going for a walk. If it means that I'm going shopping and I'm parking farther away so I can get those extra steps or I can walk a little bit more. If it means that maybe you have kids and you're chasing those around, you're choosing to go out now even to the parks in some cases. And watching them play, but not just sitting and watching them play, but choosing to actually play with them. Okay, so active living and an active lifestyle needs to be a choice. So when you have an opportunity to be more active, you're choosing that. So even things like the stairs versus the elevator, small things like not getting that golf cart if you're a golfer and choosing to get more steps in. So that active living and that active lifestyle becomes more of a choice. Okay, another example, not going through the drive-through, right? Even getting out to go in to get your coffee. It seems small, but even those 2 minutes of moving for something like getting out and going in to get your coffee, it jumpstarts your metabolism, it gets your blood flowing again, and it does amazing things for your body, right? So making sure that you're choosing that active living lifestyle is really, really important in terms of your health. And we'll go through that a little bit more when we talk about sedentary lifestyle. For physical fitness, now this is the one where people can confuse things a little bit because they think if they're doing activity, they're actually doing fitness. And they're definitely two different things. There's a difference between having an active lifestyle and purposely exercising, okay? And sometimes we group them in together, and sometimes those lines can be fairly gray. So for example, if you're just starting with exercise and workouts and that kind of thing, maybe a brisk walk could be intentional exercise for you. If you're the type of person who is fairly fit, that walk could potentially be more of an activity. So with physical fitness and exercise, you're actually training different components. And that's something that Braden's going to talk about in just a little bit. So I don't want to steal her thunder there. But you're purposely training different aspects of that fitness at a specific set aside time to do that. And again, for some people, the lines can be a little bit gray, but it's definitely different. So just to kind of test your knowledge, we've got some polls coming up. And Braden, which reminds me, I forgot that first poll. Like I asked you to remind me before.
I forgot that again. Actually, having probably to share it now just to get a sense of who's in the room with us relating to physical activity and so serving member, veteran, civilian, and other. All right, perfect. So which activity do you want out first, or which poll question? Actually, I'll do. Okay. So we're testing your knowledge now. And there's a poll. So I chose soccer.
Which is great because we have a soccer player, I think, tuning in. So is soccer, would that be considered more of exercise and workout or an activity? Okay, we got two people. Workout.
Oh.
Whoa, we're all over. This is great. So this one was a tricky one, and I'm kind of happy you threw it out there first. It could really be both, right? Depending on how you're looking at it. A soccer workout, and especially if you're competitive, it's going to be something that tasks your cardiovascular system. It's going to be more intense. It's going to last for a longer period of time. So you're definitely going to get some of those physical fitness, cardiovascular benefits out of a soccer game, okay? But at the same time, soccer can be played more as an activity. So it could be considered both, right? The way I like to look at it sometimes is that if I play soccer, could I consistently play soccer again and again and again the same day? Probably not. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be tasked. I might even be sore, especially if I haven't played for a bit. But I could probably go for a walk after a soccer game. So walk be more an activity. Soccer could potentially be more of that high intensity workout depending on how you view it. So good job. Let's try another one, Braden.
All right. We're going with everyone's favorite summertime activity. Golf. Oh, just kidding. I might have given you.
Yeah, you did give that one away, Braden. Yeah, so we have golf as an activity. It's amazing to get out and enjoy the weather. And even if you're walking and carrying your bag and doing those types of things, it is more of that activity because you're not tasking a particular physical fitness component, right? So you are out, you're burning calories. It's amazing for your health, but not necessarily a workout. All right, next one, Braden. Weight training, workout or activity? Oh, that was quick.
That was.
Weight training would be considered more of a workout. So you're setting aside specific time to train a component of fitness, which would be your strength training, right? So definitely a workout there, and you're going to get a lot of benefits from doing that. And we'll talk about exactly how much you should do coming up later in the presentation. Do one more?
Yeah, last one.
Oh, yoga. I see why you saved this one for last, Braden. Yeah. So this is one of those gray area ones as well. It's going to depend on the type of yoga that you're doing and the benefits that you want from it. Yoga is setting aside specific time to focus on something. It could be flexibility, it could be more of that mental health relaxation phase, it could be a lot of those things, right? So if it is flexibility you're working on, and I've done a few yoga classes where it's definitely strength and endurance as well, they can be pretty tough. So if it's one of those classes, it could definitely be a workout. But if it's more of those relaxation, meditation type yoga classes, although improving your mental health definitely helps with your physical fitness and physical activity levels, it would be more of that activity because you're not necessarily training strength, cardiovascular, and that types of things. So good job, everybody. I think we've got this exercise versus physical activity down pat. Let's go to the next slide, Brayden. So benefits of being physically active. I know we all feel a little bit differently about physical activity and how we feel once we complete it, how we feel in terms of our motivation getting started. But there are definitely a lot of different benefits for physical activity. Your mental or your brain health for sure. Reduce different health risks, so heart disease, high blood pressure, those types of things, osteoporosis. We'll talk about a few more when we get into sedentary lifestyle. Maintain a healthy lifestyle. Definitely, that physical activity piece kind of correlates with the rest of your health and gives you that holistic health, and also helps you be healthier moving into your life. If you are more physically active earlier on, okay, it could potentially lead to a lot less issues later on. So it's almost like an investment in your health. And we invest in so many things in our lives. We invest in our kids, we invest in money, our houses, those types of things. And oftentimes we forget that our health needs to be an investment too. And doing consistent physical activity and potentially exercise kind of puts some in the bank to help with later. When it comes to your mental and brain health, physical activity can absolutely help decrease your stress levels as well. Oftentimes we think that physical activity decreases our stress because it gives us that outlet and helps us burn off that extra energy. That's true, and it can definitely make us feel better, but physical activity actually has a different response as well. So as an example, when I am stressed, okay, I'm not sure how some of you feel, but I can start to feel a little bit tired. I can start to feel cranky, irritable, anxious, and sometimes I'm not really too sure what to do with that. So sometimes, in some cases, depending on what the stressor is, that fight or flight comes in, right? Not necessarily that quick response, but still hormones get released where it helps us try to combat that stress. Blood pressure can go up, your breathing rate goes up, you start to sweat a little bit. All of those things can be described with physical activity too. So when you are physically active, you're actually practicing that stress response so that you're teaching your body how to physiologically handle that stress more efficiently. And people who do report a physically active lifestyle actually perceive stress a little bit differently and report less perceived stress. So that's important to remember as well, that when it comes to stress, being physically active is one of the things that you can take action on to help reduce those stress levels. And I'm not sure if it's true for some of you, but it is for me. One of the hardest parts about being physically active or doing the exercise portion of things is getting started. I find once I'm in it, I'm great, I'm fine. I love the way I feel after I am physically active or do a workout. It's that getting started piece. So if you can come up with some really creative solutions to help you with that, so whether it's calling a friend and making them hold you accountable, whether it is having your sneakers by the door ready to go, whether it's a bit of a reward system, so maybe if you're physically active 5 times in a week, you get to buy a new workout outfit, something like that. Those types of things will help with that activity as well. So it's that motivation piece that often we're looking for. Next slide, Brayden.
That's minimizing a barrier, or I don't know, yeah, putting my workout gear right in front of my door so I don't have to, decide what to wear when I'm working out in the morning. Trying to minimize those as much as possible as well. Sorry, there you go.
in PSP, CFMWS, and the CAF is through the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology. So in terms of exercise, they're really our governing body on what we use for prescriptions, our certifications, and those types of things. So we're going to be going over this slide in depth a little bit later in the presentation when we get into those age categories. But this is just a quick look at what we're talking about in terms of hitting those physical activity guidelines. So how much you should be doing. So in terms of time, you're looking at 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity per week, which really can sound like quite a bit. We'll explain that again later in the presentation, but it might not be as much as you think. Adding in some of that musculoskeletal and bone strengthening type exercises, so strength training and resistance training at a minimum of 2 days a week is really important. And you'll see how this shifts a bit for different age groups. And again, we've emphasized it already, and we're just getting started with this presentation. But the more physically active you are, okay, the more likely you are to have less health risks. Okay, so it will definitely provide greater health benefits if you are more physically active.
All right. So before I get started on the next content, can everyone just kind of put in the chat what your go-to maybe physical activity or physical fitness is? So maybe for me, it's more of that cardio, maybe interval running, and then I do some weight training after. Or maybe I love to go for long runs, which I do. What's your go-to activity?
I'm kind of like you, Brian. I mix it up a little bit. I like my long runs, but I also like some circuit training as well.
Exactly, yeah. Can't run those long runs every day. 1 hour walk every day after work. Yep, awesome. Walking. Walking's a great alternative right now, or a great option right now. Just getting outside of the house, feeling out new places, absolutely. Cardio and weights and walking and cycling. Ooh, cycling in the summer, absolutely. Awesome. All right, so kind of components of physical fitness. We've got 3 main components of physical fitness that we include in the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines. So we've got included in that cardiovascular training. So that's your biking, your running, anything that's really getting that heart rate up and moving. We often hear intensity, so moderate to vigorous activity, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we have the strength training kind of component of physical fitness. So strength training is really working those muscles, trying to gain those muscles and improve them. And that will really actually help you down the road with cardiovascular training. So I know for me as a runner, I know that I need to be doing strength training. So I'm working those muscles within my legs, getting them kind of prepared for all that running that I'm going to be doing. So really they should be done in addition to or both. And then the last main area is flexibility. This is often a forgotten one, I would say. One of the key ones for injury reduction as well. So it really should be done quite frequently, and I'll touch on that a little bit in a second. But that flexibility training, so maybe some yoga, some warm up and cool downs, Tai Chi, things like that, that are really getting your flexibility, your range of motion, kind of practicing that. I know for me, at least cardiovascularly, like if I go for a run, my hip flexors are really hurting, and I notice that while I'm running. So in terms of success for my running, I'm turning to flexibility and stretching those muscles out and lengthening them, so I'm not getting so risk of injury down the road. And then other components of physical fitness would be our nutrition. So what we're putting into our body is how we're fueling it, and that will in turn lead to success or failure, I guess, not really failure, but lack of success in these other 3 components. And then mental health. So if we're doing physical fitness, it's going to not only improve our mental health, but vice versa as well. So it plays a huge role in our mental health. And we should really be practicing physical fitness as well as mental fitness in turn, both.
So, Brayden, before you go on to the next slide, I think it's important to mention too that talking about all of these components very broadly, and you're going to start to unpack that a little bit and peel back those layers. Even just taking something like strength training, you can go into endurance, strength, power. The more time you spend, the more you want to like kind of gear in on certain components as well, right? Like cardiovascular, you talk about your aerobic versus your anaerobic training. So if you're just starting to get physically active or really work on your physical fitness, these aren't necessarily components you need to focus on too much right now. It's more important to get out, to be active, and to meet those minimum requirements. And then once you get that checked off, maybe work on what some of your goals might be.
Absolutely. Perfect. So physical activity guidelines. So we talk about the FIT principle. So the FIT principle is frequency, intensity, time, and type. So this can be useful in terms of cardiovascular training, strength training, flexibility, all the different avenues that we're kind of hoping to hit on here. So in terms of our frequency, based on the physical activity guidelines, we're wanting to get about 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. So yes, that could be sound like a lot. I know in some of my other courses, I'll say, how much physical activity do we need? And everyone, I would say probably more than half of the people are saying, oh, we need over an hour a day. And I'm saying, oh, that'd be great. Like if you have the time and you want to do that, awesome. But really, we're trying to hit on that 20 to 30 minutes a day of physical activity in about bursts of 10 minutes or more to kind of hit those target goals. In terms of intensity, so I reference moderate to vigorous physical activity or intensity levels. So that's anything where we're breathing a little harder. So for moderate intensity, we're breathing a little harder. Maybe we can still talk, but maybe we're noticing our breath. So maybe a brisk walk, as some of you mentioned, that's what you like to do, or bike riding, depending on the intensity that you're doing. And then that vigorous intensity, I know for me with soccer, I'll be noticeably out of breath when I'm, sprinting for that ball or sprinting to, I don't know. But that's where that vigorous intensity is coming in. So if you're doing those in bouts of 10 minutes or more, that could be classified as vigorous activity. So those things like jogging or sprinting or running, maybe cross-country skiing, maybe the elliptical at work or whatever physical activity you're feeling out of breath for. It's going to be different for everyone. And then it's covering. What's the next one? Intensity, time. So 150 minutes per week, as I mentioned. That includes, so in terms of type, we want to hit on cardiovascular, very, very important, that 150 minutes per week. We will also want to introduce strength training into our routine about 2 to 3 times a week, more if needed, or more if wanted. And that's often as well as flexibility. So yoga, Tai Chi, warm up, cool down, all of those things. In terms of type, we're in a kind of a cool spot right now, as I know a lot of people with unit reps, you'll come to the gym, you'll find out what you're doing as soon as you get to the gym with your PSP rep, and you don't have a ton of choice in terms of what type of exercise you're doing that day. So for right now, you have all the freedom in the world to choose what kind of physical activity you're doing, what activity you're doing, what area or type of activity, and for how long. So it's really giving you the opportunity to kind of learn what activities you like to do. And that's very, very important in terms of if you're going to be doing it on a continuous basis, you're going to want to like the activity that you're doing. So for cardiovascular training, so this is the #1 injury potential within the calf. So if we're doing cardiovascular training on a regular basis, it does have the potential for repetitive strain injuries. So if I said, like Jess, I like to run all the time. If I'm doing that day in and day out, that's an opportunity for me to get a repetitive strain injury. When I'm overtraining a certain thing, that could cause injury. And we see that time in and time out of, forced runs or whatever and you're causing slow injuries that you kind of just ignore, and then it continues to get worse and worse. So we really want to try to minimize that with our cardiovascular training. So really switching up the activities that we're doing. So maybe if I'm doing running one day, I'm doing biking the next, or every other day, or something like that, a brisk walk twice a week, or really switching up the activities that you're doing, but still trying to hit on that cardiovascular health.
You're playing soccer one day, to go for a long run the next day, you are going to risk those repetitive strain injuries. And running is the #1 cause of injury in the calf, not because it's a terrible idea to do, but we forget that running itself is a sport, not just a cardiovascular training exercise. So it needs to be done and put into a program specifically for people to progress appropriately with that 5 to 10% rule that I think we're going to talk about in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so great. Yeah, absolutely. Trying to kind of, choose avenues that are different, but also choosing different kind of activity levels. So maybe I'm doing yoga one day, maybe strength training another, then going for a run on that third day. But absolutely. As well, here, the importance of a warm up and a cool down. So in terms of injury prevention, we really want to get those muscles up and moving, warm them up before we're actually going right into that vigorous or moderate physical activity. So if I go for a run, I'm spending 5 to 10 minutes or longer before I'm even starting that workout routine, actually just warming up. So whatever that dynamic stretch looks like for you. For me, it's simply walking and doing some like dynamic stretching as I walk. It'll look different for you, but absolutely very, very important for your cardiovascular training and injury prevention. As well, here I put do something you enjoy. So if we want to get those 150 minutes per week of physical activity, we're not going to get there if we don't enjoy the activity we're doing. So make sure you're kind of exploring all the options, trying to get physical activity in as much as possible, but choosing those activities that you know you'll come back to. So if I'm someone who hates running, I'm not going to choose that as my hobby or my cardiovascular training of choice when I know I'm going to try and get out of it as much as possible. So choosing those activities you really, really enjoy is very important for cardiovascular training. All right, so now we're going to talk about strength training. So I would say this is probably gaining a fair bit of popularity right now. Oftentimes people are turning to strength training and maybe forgetting cardiovascular training a little bit. So really important that we're still maintaining that cardiovascular training or cardiovascular health. So doing that kind of cardio workout as well as strength training. So we want to turn to strength training about 2 to 3 times a week. And it's great to just build up those muscles for those endurance exercises that you will be doing. So it's almost like a supplementary, I'm building up my leg muscles to then go for a run and for those endurance activities. As well with strength training, we want to be smart about it. So we want to look at form, the movements that we're doing, how controlled we are. We want to focus on slower movements as opposed to those quick, maybe cardiovascular movements. As well, we're going to look at the size of weight or the amount of weight and the muscle group that we're working. So really, really important here, as well as with cardiovascular training, that 5 to 10% progression rule. So if we're just starting out in any physical activity, cardiovascular strength, flexibility, we don't want to run out of the gate and say, okay, I'm going to do a 10K run, or I'm going to lift 220 pounds on my deadlift. You want to work towards those goals. So absolutely have goals in mind, but that's a progression. You can't just get there like that. You want to aim for about that 5 to 10% progression rule or overload as we progress. So if I'm lifting, 10 pounds on my bicep curl to start out, I'm going to slowly progress each week to get up to that goal maybe of 20 pounds or whatever it is. So really, really listen to your body there and don't overdo it, because that's when injury is going to happen. As well here, I think strength training is a great opportunity during staying at home or at home workouts. So right now, a lot of us aren't having access to the gym, and that shouldn't be a deterrent to stop from doing strength training. We can still do strength training in our homes by getting creative with it. I think everyone's kind of go-to right now is turning to cardiovascular health, which is fine, but also introduce that strength training. I know for me, I have like bags of rice or buckets that I use filled with sand. So things, get creative with it, try different things, and still maintain that strength training 2 to 3 times a week. I know actually near my house, there's also the gyms that are outside that just opened up. So the body weight gyms that you can also access. Jess, did you have something to add with this?
Yeah, like, I mean, sometimes I feel like in the run of the day, I don't have a lot of time, and some days are busier than others. So if it's a strength training day and I still need to do some cardio, sometimes I'll combine them. So I'll go for a slow jog around my neighborhood and I'll come back and do some push-ups, and I'll go for another slow jog and I'll come back and do squats. So just because you're strength training doesn't mean you're not working your cardiovascular system as well. Anytime your heart rate's up, you're seeing some of those cardiovascular benefits. The most important thing with that type of training is that you're talking to a professional to have them periodize that program for you and your needs.
Perfect. So absolutely combining them. Yeah, I kind of talked about them very separate, but absolutely you can combine them. And I know a lot of people might do cardiovascular training at the beginning of their workout and then go into some strength training. Whatever it looks like for you is fine. All right, so flexibility training and injury reduction. So this is where we kind of talk about, we have an injury reduction cell that we normally discuss, and flexibility training would be included in that. So it's really important to maintain a injury-free lifestyle. We really want to try to avoid injury as much as we can, and really increase that range of motion when we are about to. So if we increase our range of motion, that's going to help us in our strength training and in our cardiovascular training. So really, flexibility training kind of helps with everything. So dynamic stretching before a workout, really, really good to get those muscles kind of warmed up, ready to move. So it's going to look different for everyone, as I mentioned before. And then you can follow up with a cool down, however you want, dynamic stretching, static stretching, to kind of stretch out those muscles again and not have injury later on. As well, a stretching regime should emphasize the muscles that you're about to work out. So making sure that you're choosing flexibility training that you would choose, or those muscle groups that you would work during cardiovascular strength training. And some kind of avenues to take with this for flexibility training. I know for some of us at PSP, we will like do some flexibility training even before or after our workouts, go to a mat afterwards. We'll do yoga a couple of times a week, some stretching. I know Tai Chi is quite popular. But yeah, do you have anything else to add to this?
And flexibility exercises. Oftentimes when it comes to flexibility, I think the common theory was to put them after our workouts, right? That's when we're going to see the benefits of flexibility training. For flexibility itself, you want to make sure you're doing it on its own, right? So taking that time to attend like a yoga class or doing some of that flexibility training, one of the best times is if you're just sitting on your couch at night, winding down from the end of the day, take some time and stretch. You're going to see a huge difference in how you feel from just those simple things.
Yeah. And in terms of performance, like after I introduced stretching into my kind of routine, I saw a huge improvement in the ability of movements while I was running or doing strength training. So you do notice a huge, huge difference when you introduce flexibility. However, I'd say it's probably one of the more like ones that people often forget or say, oh, I'll do that another time. But really important to emphasize this kind of training. All right, moving on.
All right, so with the study, we've talked a bit about an active lifestyle and how to have one and how to add some of those exercise components into your daily routine. And I'm going to be very mindful of time here because I know we still have a huge chunk to cover. I'm going to talk a little quickly about sedentary lifestyle. So more and more often, people are choosing a sedentary lifestyle. Really, society has made it very easy for us to not move around. Even in our workplaces, we don't even have to get out of our car to go to a bank machine anymore. So there's a lot of things that society has done, and especially during COVID, which is, again, for different reasons, but delivery services, those types of things. So really, if we don't want to purposely choose to move, we don't really have to in a lot of cases. One of the ways you'll see people measure their activity or movement is through steps. So on that note too, ideally you want to hit around 10,000 steps per day, which is quite a bit. And if you're not very sedentary, if you are sedentary now and getting a lot less than that or really not moving too much, 10,000 could be a big goal to strive for. So even setting small increments to get to that point would be recommended. But yeah, you want to try to keep moving as much as possible and challenge yourself to do that. I know, just to put it into perspective, back when I was working in the office, if I got up, did my morning routine, went to work, even did a 5K run, and come home and did some stuff around the house, I still wasn't hitting those 10,000 steps. So I really had to make an effort to get up and get moving. So a sedentary lifestyle is one where you really don't move that much. So you're sitting a lot more often. And just because, again, I mentioned it earlier, just because you are the person that does that strength training or that workout doesn't necessarily mean you have an active lifestyle either. So if I, go for my run every day, which I'm going to get health benefits from, but I still park as close as I can. I sit on the couch most of the evening. So let's say, the other 11 hours that I'm awake and moving and functioning, I'm sitting, that's going to have a lot of detrimental effects to your health as well. Right? So it's important to know how much time that you spend sitting and being sedentary. That includes your drive time, time spent eating meals while you're sitting, even though that is very beneficial. It should be done. TV, computer time, work time, especially if you've been working on the computer a lot like I have over the last few months. It adds up, and you really need to start paying attention to that, because there are a lot of detrimental health risks. The first thing you have to remember is that it slows your metabolism down, right? So we work really hard to try to keep our metabolism high, to burn off those extra calories that we're eating and to make sure that we're healthy and everything's functioning. When you're sedentary, it slows down that metabolism quite a bit, right? So there's that. If you're the type of person that does do workouts and then you sit down for a long period of time, you're going to feel, and I know some of you can relate to this, probably pretty sore when you go to stand up and move around. I know if I run midday or even in the morning and then I'm sitting most of the day, it hurts to get up. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm really cutting off blood flow to that lower body, right? So the more you're up, the more you're moving around, the faster you're going to be able to recover from a lot of things, because that blood flow is going to keep pumping through your body. A lot of other risks in terms of being sedentary could be high blood pressure, heart disease. It is linked with physical inactivity, which could also lead to things like depression, anxiety, those types of things, as well as osteoarthritis or osteoporosis. So really, the more you can move, and again, it doesn't have to always be those purposeful workouts, but just getting up and moving, the better off that you're going to be. So there's a lot of different ways that you can reduce your sedentary time. Everybody's lifestyle is different, so you're going to have to come up with some creative ways to add in some more activity to your lifestyle. So maybe you get rid of the remote control and you get up to go turn the TV on or change the channel. Stand instead of sitting when you can. So although I'm sitting now, when I'm actually in my workplace, I do have a standing workstation that I choose to use quite often. I don't use it all day, every day, but it goes up and down fairly easy, so I can have breaks if I need it, but I can stand quite often, okay? Stand up at work, look for your workspace, plan active time when you would normally be sedentary. I know one thing our team tries to do is walking meetings. So if we can easily go and walk and talk about something, then we'll do that. It's not always that convenient, but sometimes we can fit that in, which definitely helps with that activity piece. And also set limits for your sedentary behavior. So challenge yourself. If If you love watching TV and it's one way that you choose to relax, there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe give yourself an hour a day versus, binge watching the latest thing on Netflix.
Perfect. So now we're going to move into my mic's on, yeah. Now we're going to move into physical activity for all component of this presentation. So we'll be talking about different age groups and what their needs are in terms of physical activity. So this is based on the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines. The next slide will kind of give a graphic of their guideline, essentially, if you go to their website. So first off is early years, so that 0 to 4 age range. So this is really when we're developing all of our skills in terms of movement patterns, learning how to move with our body, all these things. So it's really, really important that we're being mindful of that and making sure that in this age group, if we have kids that are this age group or maybe grandkids, whatever it might be, that we're taking the time to get out there, get creative with the play that we're doing, and try to minimize that sedentary activity that's screen time oriented as much as possible. So with this age group, it is important to note that sedentary activity is not as downplayed as maybe other age groups. So really important here that we're still doing sedentary activity with regard to reading or singing or puzzles, more of that intellectual sedentary activity, but we're reducing that screen time as much as we can. So handing over the iPad or whatever it is to the 0 to 4-year-old might not be the best option. Oops, sorry. So this is what the 24-hour movement guidelines looks like for early years. So if we're looking at someone who's less than 1 year old, we're looking at 30 minutes a day of kind of explorative play. So maybe tummy time, that time awake where they're actively moving around. They're probably not fully mobile yet, but they're exploring their options as much as they can. That plays a huge role in physical literacy and kind of movement patterns, understanding those movement patterns, and kind of just practicing those. If we see based on this 4 here, the purple is sleep. So sleep is a very, very important part of this age group, 14 to 17 hours for younger children, and that goes down a little bit to around 11 hours of sleep. And then that time sitting, so about 1 hour at a time, we should be sitting and kind of doing that play with them. So storytelling or puzzles with them, something to encourage that mental stimulation. And then kind of as we move through the toddler age, maybe 1 to 2 years old, we're spending at least 180 minutes doing various physical activities at various activity levels. So now maybe they're walking a little bit, exploring a little bit more. That energetic creative play here is where this will be introduced. And then when we're looking at preschoolers, so 3 to 4 years old, we're moving into that at least 60 minutes of energetic play per day. More is always better, so as much play as possible with keeping into those guidelines of sleep and sit as well. And then as we move into children and youth, so this is where a huge emphasis is on that 60 minutes of physical activity per day of sweating. So that's moderate to vigorous physical activity that they need, as well as additional movement throughout the day. As well here, there's a huge emphasis on physical literacy. So I know here is a huge opportunity to teach various sports, various movement patterns, teach them about the difference between physical lifestyle or activity or physical activity. All these, this is an opportunity where they're going to kind of learn these things for themselves. I know this age group is often where they start going into competitive sports or sports for play. So making sure that's an opportunity as well for physical literacy. Anything to add with physical literacy, Jess? I know we talked about this before.
Like the age group you were talking about before, it's important for kids to have a sense of just the basics of movement, right? Like, so running, jumping, throwing, changing direction. Oftentimes sports tend to give us those types of things, but if they don't, to just even practice them and really hone in on those physical literacy skills is important for those age groups.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So here you see that sweat is now introduced in addition to step. So sweat is that 60 minutes per day of physical activity, and this will change slightly as we age, so into adulthood. But really important that we're hitting on that 60 minutes as well as additional activity. So we're sweating, moderate, vigorous physical activity 1 hour a day, and then those steps could be, walking or doing some kind of activity. And then you'll see here, sit is the smallest one, where we're trying to reduce that sitting as much as possible. So they're likely sitting all day at school or some of the day at school, trying to reduce that when they come home. So trying to reduce that screen time and only sitting down for maybe dinner or homework or things like that.
Active lifestyle and reducing the sedentary behaviors and things like screen time and work time, sitting as much as you can is important. We've spent a lot of time already taking you through each specific component. So what I actually want to do is I want to skip to the next slide, Braden, and I want to review those guidelines right now and explain them a bit more. So when it comes to your health benefits, accumulate 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity. So one thing that I've noticed throughout my career is that everyone's interpretation of moderate and vigorous are so different. So I want to make sure that's really clear throughout this presentation. So moderate means if you're on an elliptical trainer and I pop over and I'm like, hey, Braden, how are you doing? You should be able to answer, you know what, I'm doing pretty good, but this is kind of tough. Okay? Vigorous means you should answer like this, I can't talk, right? So that brisk walk, if you're comfortable, if you can do it for a long period of time, it might not necessarily fall into this category, but keep in mind, you're still going to get a lot of health benefits from it, but so don't not do it, but just keep in mind you might want to walk a little faster, or maybe the route you're going to choose is going to be a hillier route to challenge yourself a little bit and have some of that sweat come out, right? The fitter you are, okay, the more those types of activities would be more activity, not necessarily a exercise or workout, so you might have to challenge yourself a little bit. I know so many people out there have lots of gadgets and gizmos to help track this. I know myself, I actually wear Garmin, and it tracks my my active minutes in the run of the week. The one thing that I learned very quickly is it sticks to this standard, and I think Fitbits do the same, of that 10 minutes or more. So I could have a very intense workout that lasts 8 minutes. Okay, let's say, I'm not even going to give you an example of what type of pain that might be. But even though my heart rate is really high and I'm seeing some benefits from it, it's not going to give me those active minutes that I want because I don't get that full 10 minutes. So in order to get the most bang for your buck, you want to hit that 10 minutes. That's what the research shows us to get those cardiovascular benefits, right? So it doesn't mean that every day you have to, and Braden already hit this, do 60-minute workout. It just means that you have to do it in those 10-minute chunks at a minimum, right? So if you are that busy person and you don't have an hour to throw down for something like that, if you can get those 10 minutes in, you're going to see those health benefits, right? When it comes to strength training, it's recommended at least 2 days a week in order to see some of those health benefits in terms of your musculoskeletal system as well as your bone strengthening. And again, this is a minimum, and we're talking major muscle groups. So if you are the person that's only going to do 2 days a week, you need to make sure you're hitting everything with those big movements. And what I mean by that is things like squats, lunges, push-ups, planks, presses, those exercises where it's not just in individual muscle groups. As an example, a bicep curl, right? You want to try to get the most bang for your buck, and you want to make sure you're not doing too much too soon. Again, I've said it numerous times. I think I put it in the chat. Reach out to your PSP fitness teams, and they'll be able to help you kind of correlate what is best for you if you're looking for some type of a resistance training program. okay? And again, that last piece, the more physically active you are, the more benefits that you're going to see. And in all honesty, the more physically active you are, the easier it becomes to get motivated and to do it. And I promise you, the better that you're going to feel. Next slide, Braden. So in older adults, this demographic tends to be a lot less active than the other demographics that we've talked about. And one main focus needs to be on strength training and flexibility. And this definitely will help with that investment piece moving through your life a little bit. Some great examples could be things like yoga, tai chi, walking, gardening, stationary biking. With this age group, if they haven't done a lot of high impact activities, so example, running or jogging, maybe not the best time to start. And if they are starting, definitely work with a professional. But a lot of those low impact activities like swimming or stationary bike riding and that kind of stuff is hugely beneficial for their cardiovascular system. And adding in some of those strength training and flexibility workouts will help reduce the risk of injury moving forward, as long as it's done and progressed appropriately, and help decrease risks of things that might happen in life, similar to like falls and that kind of stuff. When you are physically active, your recovery time is going to be a little bit better too. So that's important to keep in mind with this age group. And so if we're going to look at recommendations, pop over. So this is the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology's recommendation for those over 65. And you can see it's pretty similar to what we've been dealing with. It still says moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity. But as you get older, the types of activity that will get you to moderate and vigorous are going to change a little bit. So maybe that walk for the 30-year-old is more of a low intensity exercise, but for someone who's 70, it's definitely going to potentially be more vigorous. So keeping those things in mind. And for that cardiovascular exercise, choosing more of those low impact activities is going to be key, right? Something that allows you to get that heart rate up without the strain and the pounding on the joint, okay? Those muscle and bone strengthening, that resistance training is going to be important too. And we already talked in the last slide a little bit about that. If you are in that age group and you do have poor mobility, and performing different activities and almost practicing some of the movements that you're going to use every day is key. So bending over to pick things up in a controlled environment, squatting, so sitting in a chair, getting in and out of your car. Sometimes it's the smallest thing that can really kind of tip someone over and cause that injury. So practicing those types of movements in that age group is going to be important. And again, the more physically active you are, the more health benefits you're going to see.
I think here in this age group as well, it's I often say to correspond physical activity with social activity. So oftentimes you'll see different avenues of physical activity where you might see a team sport of tennis or pickleball or water aerobics, where you're not only in that physical activity, but you're also maintaining that social interaction piece and having that opportunity to do so.
Awesome. So before a little bit about resources, does anyone have any questions on anything that we've covered up until now? I'm going to let Braden talk. If you do have one, pop it in the chat box and I'll be responding.
Sure. All right, so last slide of the day is resources. So there's tons and tons of resources available when it comes to physical activity. My suggestion would be to choose resources that are Canada, what's the word I'm looking for? Reputable resources. So the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines, awesome resource if you want to know more about how much physical activity you need. The balance strategy as well. In the military context, we talk about physical activity within the balance strategy. DFIT is a great opportunity to get a more fitness regime or physical fitness regime that's tailored to you, as well as our PSP teams. I know at Borden we offer free services around PSP and our fitness team that they can kind of tailor a program to you, as well as on our site there's videos that you can watch or live streams that you can watch to follow along with if you're running out of physical activity suggestions, I guess, during COVID. Did you want to add anything to those? All right. If there's any questions, throw them out there. Otherwise, we are all done. I'll just put a few polls out. Oh.
Could you talk a little bit about the next series that Borden has coming out?
Yeah, so I know this is the national platform, but here at Borden, we're kind of always doing something around a webinar of our own, so not on the national platform, but only Borden-based. So upcoming, we have a 3-part series around summer health or summer wellness. So, and remind me to talk about the Summer Wellness Challenge in a minute. But so 3-part series coming up around healthy barbecue. So if you're a meat eater and you just want healthier options to barbecue or summer cooking, we have that one coming up next Thursday at 9 a.m. The following week, we'll be talking about low-risk drinking guidelines, how to host a party, summer party within the guidelines of COVID, 10 people or less in our area, as well as some mocktail recipes we'll be trying out with you to kind of get you thinking about alternatives to that party atmosphere in the summer, but taking it a little healthier and responsible approach to it. And then the last week, we'll be touching on some meatless alternatives to the barbecue. So some lower in saturated fat, maybe or some healthier options for you to be barbecuing as opposed to always turning to that beef burger, high in saturated fat, not so healthy for you option. We'll be taking you through some other options that are available to you. As well, at Borden, we also have our social summer wellness challenge, where each week you do different wellness activities. So prepare a healthy meal, eat dinner with your family, go for a walk, attend an HP webinar, different things to gain ballots into a draw. And the grand prize draw is pretty unreal. It's a stand-up paddleboard family sized with a paddle and some lessons. So a great prize if you wanted to join that and you're in the Borden area. But if no other questions, thanks so much for joining. Have a good day, everyone. Week. Bye.